Hello, I'm John Kane, and I welcome you to Let's Talk Native on this Tuesday, February 11th. While this program may not provide a path to spiritual enlightenment, we do encourage and in some cases start conversations. We kind of break the rules here for Native Radio. We don't do prayers and we don't do buffalo speeches. We take a tough look at history, oppression, and survival. We talk about culture, the arts, politics, and identity. And we may step on a few toes along the way. But our real goal here is to bring people together by breaking down what separates us. We will take on the false narratives and provide critical thinking to all that is heaped upon us. And we do it all right here live from the Cattaraugus territory of the Seneca Nation. So let's talk Native. But first, let me remind you that our audio streams live on our website, letstalknative.com. We take video of we stream live video of the show on our Facebook group page, Let's Talk Native group page. And we post the shows up on SoundCloud after our broadcast, and so they go up on all your favorite podcast platforms. We take video of the show and we put it up on our YouTube channel, which is Let's Talk Native TV. You can subscribe to our podcast and catch the shows anytime on demand, and you can subscribe to our YouTube videos, which includes this show, my show in New York, and short form videos that Jake and I work on together. I am the show's host and producer, and I'm joined in studio by Jake Proud, who is managing our audio and our video. All right, let's get into it. The last show we covered what is now turning into a bit of a tinderbox with the fight of the Wet'suwet'en people defending their lands against another pipeline being trying to be pushed through our territories. This is in what is known as British Columbia, although I hate to use the word, and on the above the imaginary line that divides Turtle Island. We're seeing a lot of this stuff play out. There's been arrests. There has been assaults. There's been acts of solidarity throughout Native territories, mostly on the above the the imaginary line. Not the least of which has been taking place in Tyendinaga, which is now under assault by, from what I understand, OPP as well as RCMP, and what I'm hearing now is that arrests are being made. So, but the question that always comes up, and I see a lot of things posted on Facebook, and people are asking, what can we do to help? What can we do to help? And the question is, what can we do? And that's the question. But the answer is, we can do, these are what we can do. There are plenty of things that we can do. And I want to go through some of those things, but I also want to talk about the things that we categorically cannot do. And obviously, there are things that we can do that we're not doing, and there's things that we shouldn't do that we are doing. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about some of those things. First and foremost, we need to educate. We need to educate ourselves, and we need to educate others. Now, I know there's a lot of criticism about using social media. We hear the expression Facebook warriors and that kind of stuff. But you know what? If that's all you can do, then do that. Then educate people. Share the. Try to vet what you're sharing. I mean, make sure that you're not, just promoting individuals like false funding, crowdsource funding and that kind of stuff. But share the information. Watch the videos, read the stories, understand what the conflict is, and educate yourself, your family, your community, but also the non-native community. Educate in any way that you can, and by all means, use social media, Twitter. I mean, younger people are using, Snapchat and Instagram and all kinds of other stuff. Whatever you use, I don't care if you've got. I don't care if you've got to write letters to the editor. You want to do it that way. If you want to make phone calls and send emails, I mean, whatever you've got to do to share the information, we need to educate. But I'll tell you, first on that, we need to educate ourselves. And that'll be evident as I go through some of the things I want to talk about today. Education is a key, because we can't even determine what to do if we don't know why we're doing it. So I think education is key. And there's a lot of good information out there. There are a lot of good sources. And, just like with anything, look, the mainstream media, it sucks. But there are these guys who who become Facebook famous, and they try to turn themselves into heroes and jump in front of every camera they can to try and they show up. They show up at these places, and and they show up like they're there to save the day. And I'm going to talk a little bit about showing up and where to show up. But look, however you've got to find a good source of information, find that source of information and then share it and make sure that you stay in contact with people. Because one of the best ways to prevent some of the atrocities that happens is to shine a light on it, and that's what education is. That's why they call it being enlightened. The idea of shining a light on some of this travesty that happens on native land. So education is key, and we all can play a role in that. I mean, even if we ourselves don't have the information, we know where we can get it. Sometimes it comes to us, by accident, however we get it, and then we share it. That's just a simple thing. The other thing we do is we can support each other, and supporting each other can come in a variety of ways. Obviously, that education and sharing some of the information is a part of that support, but offering words of encouragement. I know this sounds very, very benign, but it is important. I think we do need to praise those people who are showing courage in the face of adversity, but do it in a way that I don't want to give people a false sense of security about their vulnerability either. But I mean, by all means, support. And look, I know there's a lot of people are going to say burn tobacco, pray, do whatever else. That's not my thing. But if that's what you want to do, then by all means do it. But don't let smoking candles be the only thing that you do. I mean, when I say support people, there is financial support that's needed. But there's also ways that you can help people who are not just going to the site of a conflict, but who are looking to do the next thing, which is nonviolent direct actions locally. And I'll tell you, those are more effective. I mean, 10,000 people showing up in Standing Rock didn't stop the Dakota Access Pipeline. It made for good TV. It made for good videos, and all of those drones that were showing this makeshift village that was set up. I mean, it made for great numbers and all kinds of other stuff. But at the end of the day, if those people were just there and not doing these nonviolent direct actions, and again, I'm not advocating that anybody do anything violent. I'm not saying that we should limit to what is quote unquote legal, but we should look within the people that we can support and do what we can to support nonviolent direct action. And so what's nonviolent direct action? Well, it might mean blocking an entranceway. It may mean blocking a railroad track. It may mean, building, look, part of this Unistowden camps were involved in building tiny homes, putting people to live in these areas that perhaps they didn't live in before, so they could be those protectors of the land and water. So this is about blocking. It might be about building. It could be about reclaiming either not just lost lands, but lands that have not been utilized in a way. And I don't mean that we've got to develop them and turn into our own worst enemy with developing some of these remote places. But there are things that we can do that are a part of this nonviolent direct, and all that means is direct action means that you're physically doing something, and beyond the Facebook warrior stuff. So that's this NVDA, this is a big thing, because this is what costs our opponents money. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I want to go through the list a little bit more, but I'm going to circle back around to this nonviolent direct action. The other thing is that we can do is, and people talk about divestment, boycotting and divesting and that kind of stuff. For those of us who don't have a whole lot, we're not invested in the stock market, we can't change our portfolios and that kind of stuff. There's still ways of making sure that you don't use companies who are the most egregious actors in a lot of these conflicts. And frankly, if you use a bank, I don't care how you use a bank, but make the noise that would encourage divestment from whether it's a retirement plan or whatever you may be involved in, whether it's your organization, whether it's your union, whatever it is, do what you can to divest from the companies who are the most, violent or clearly the most oppressive people involved in some of these things. And of course, one of the easiest ways to divest is to use less fossil fuels. Most of these conflicts that I'm talking about is where we are stopping either some sort of extraction or some sort of distribution of fossil fuels. And it may mean that we have to take some action against Canadian railroad or a pipeline or a company that's involved in this stuff. But I'll tell you the one thing we shouldn't do. Don't take the jobs. Don't take the money that they're offering to shut you up. And I'll get more into what we can't do. But divesting is something that we not only can do, but education. We can encourage people to divest. My friend Shawnee Rice and one of her friends were down climbing flagpoles in New York City, hanging up big banners in front of Chase Morgan. Basically telling them, calling them out for being among the highest invested in the Dakota Access Pipeline and Keystone XL Pipeline and other things. So, you can also, when it comes to divestment, you can make those public stands, do the nonviolent direct action against companies who should be divesting. So that's another thing. Now the other two things, look, I'll be the first one to suggest that the mainstream media gets a lot wrong, and this isn't about fake news necessarily. It's just about bias, and most of it's racial bias. Pressure the mainstream media, of whether it's your local stuff or whether it's look, I'm seeing stuff on CBC and even APTN, and some of the stuff is terrible. And that's on the Canadian side. On the U.S. side, oh, man, it isn't just Fox News is a problem. CNBC, all these guys. Now, every once in a while, somebody will come out of the woodwork and make a comment that is worth noting. So maybe you do get, somebody that comes out of MSNBC or Amy Goodwin with Democracy Now! or whatever else. But we need to pressure the mainstream media to do the coverage and you know what? If they get it wrong, we need to call them out on getting it wrong. This is where social media and mainstream media, we have an opportunity to call them out. So pressuring the mainstream media is something else that we should do. And we've got to do it by whatever means necessary. We've got to make sure that this stuff does get the proper coverage, especially when physical abuse is coming out of this thing. When that people are being assaulted and they're being injured or worse, we've got to make sure that the mainstream media is all over it. Look, I'm not one that advocates us being involved in the political systems of the U.S. and Canada. But that doesn't mean that we can't pressure their elected officials or people who have an interest in their elected officials. We should call them out, and for every racist comment they make, every racist bill or resolution they promote, we've got to call them out on this stuff. So I think pressuring the elected officials of the countries who are perpetrating some of this stuff against us, so meaning U.S. and Canada in particular, the provinces as well. Pressure the folks involved in law enforcement, all of it. We need to pressure them. So these are among the things that we can do. Now let me get back to nonviolent direct action. One of the things that happens though when we do this, when we block something, we put up a blockade, we know eventually, just like in Tandanega, that the cops are going to come. The question is, when we do these nonviolent direct actions, and we do them close to our own homes, so we actually perform acts of solidarity without having to go out to Wet'suwet'en territory, or without having to go out to Standing Rock or Bears Ears or wherever else the next place is, right? We don't actually have to make that trip. There are things that we often can do close to home, whether it's because the very companies involved in the aggression in the first place, they oftentimes are they have a presence in our own areas. We can make noise there. We can take actions there. But certainly, even if it's not about these companies, these Canadian or multinational companies, these U.S. Canadian companies, it's the U.S. and Canada. I mean, look, I'm here in Seneca territory, western door of the Haudenosaunee. There are border crossings here. Look, you want to interfere with their commerce, then do a nonviolent direct action there. But here's the thing: we don't have to set up a permanent camp there. If we're blocking a railway, if we're blocking a highway, if we're blocking a construction site, just keep in mind that we can go home and come back later. And I say this because the experience that we had here in Seneca territory back in the 90s was when we would do something, we wouldn't just stand there and let ourselves get arrested or try to get in a situation where we're going to be into a physical conflict with the police. It did happen. But what we would do is we'd let the police presence come. We'd go home, eat dinner, get a good night's sleep. We'd come back out the next day someplace else. We have the luxury when we're doing these things in our home areas, close to home. We have the luxury of having the comfort of our own homes within driving distance or sometimes walking distance. So let the police, let the law enforcement, let the powers that be the ones that are inconvenient. Let them have to come and spend $30,000 or $30 million a month in putting a police presence that no way in hell would they do it otherwise. They sure aren't going to put that kind of police presence because a Native woman turned up missing. But I guarantee you block a rail line, they're going to send out the resources. So let them send out the resources. And you know what? We'll block it someplace else the next time. Keep them on the run. Let's not get in a situation where we think part of the answer is getting arrested. Look, that's what white people do, right? That's what celebrities do. They show up at these events and they get arrested and they get a slap on the wrist and they've got the resources to pay for their lawyers and everything else. We get ourselves arrested and the next thing you know, they're physically assaulting us or they're insulting us in such a way it turns into more of a physical confrontation. When these white celebrities get arrested, they don't get beat up. They aren't getting clubbed like what our people do. So look, let the white people, if that's what they want to do, if they think that's the way that they need to stand up and help us, by all means, I encourage that help. But I think it's wrong for any of us to give more credence to their legal system and their justice system, because it isn't a justice system. It's more of a just us system. So look, we need to understand that we have the upper hand. One of the things and I've mentioned this before, Canada did an analysis, or actually this organization called the Macdonald-Laurier. They do these reports. They hired this guy who wrote a book about conflict, I guess. His name is Douglas Bland, and he wrote one of these Macdonald-Laurier reports. And in it, he talked about using a computer model developed by one of the Ivy League schools up in the East here, and that would assess the likelihood or the percentage or the likelihood of an insurgency, and even a violent insurgency from Indigenous people in Canada. And this was, this was being looked at as the I Don't Know More movement was gaining some traction, and we came out of the Oka crisis and so many other things that were going on. So when this guy used this computer model, which just asked for standard, available public information, came to the determination that Canada was ripe for an insurgency by Indigenous people. But here are the things that was taken into consideration. For one thing, the population, the poverty associated with the population. What were the age demographics? Where in what age group were we kind of building up a large segment of our population? Where we were living? Where was Canadian infrastructure as it relates to the lands that we occupied. And among those things, they determined that much of the Canadian infrastructure was very, very vulnerable to nonviolent direct action, by indigenous people. Why? Because they ran that crap right through our territories. And they certainly ran much of their infrastructure far from where they lived, at least far from where they lived permanently. I mean, they have to establish these man camps because when they go into build, or whether it's the extractive industries or these pipelines, they don't have local people to work these jobs. They bring them in from other places. And it's the same thing that goes for their security or the police or whatever else that they're going to bring in. So they're really vulnerable, and they know it. Look, we don't have a big population. We're not going to stand toe to toe and do battle with Canada or the United States or even a province. And I'm going to get into the legal thing in probably more in the second half of the show when I get to the things that we can't do. But the things that we can do is that we can be a pain in the ass, and that's what. First and foremost, the whole idea of doing a direct action is to be inconvenient. I mean, and part of this has to do with costing them money. And I'll go back to, again, here in Seneca territory, when we were battling New York State over tobacco taxation and them trying to fight us over fuel tax and that kind of stuff. We were costing New York State something like $33 million a month. $33 million a month. Now, and that's back in the 90s. So the whole idea, and I know that one of the longest shutdowns was happening up in Tandanega, where the Canadian rail system was being shut down. That costs them money. Look, we have the seaway that goes through our territories. We have trains that go through our territories. We have highways that go through our territories. We have border crossings that go through our territories. There's any number of things that we can do that can disrupt Canadian and U.S. commerce. And is it going to cause inconvenience to us? Yes, absolutely it is. But if you're going to ask, what can we do? Well, this is what we can do. And so if you want to know how to support, again, there's all different levels that people can step up. Simple things, education. But more physically, get involved in some of these nonviolent direct actions. Destroy some equipment, for crying out loud. No, yeah, is it vandalism? Is it illegal? Yes, it's illegal. But don't get caught either. I mean, look, I hate to sound, like I'm promoting, some real violent criminal activity. I'm not. But you know what? If trucks started showing up on my territories with, those $5,000 tires, on these big earth movers, I think a cordless drill with a hole saw might be one of the best tools. I mean, do something. I mean, do something to stop them. And you know what? Take your stand and then leave. I can't. I don't know how to impress upon our people this. I know we have this spirit in us that wants us to fight, and men and women. But you know what? They don't care. They don't care if they hurt somebody or kill somebody. They'll justify it. So I'm not interested in even killing them because there's too many of them. So I'm not talking about trying to physically injure them, but financially injure them. I mean, do the things that are going to cost the U.S., Canada, New York State, if need be, is what we went through here in Seneca territory, or whether it's the provinces, BC. Let BC incur a cost for what's happening in Wet'suwet'en territory. Let Ontario incur a cost for what's happening. Let Quebec incur a cost. These are the things that we need to do. We need to figure out what are the things that we can do that will be most effective in putting a financial hurt on them. Look, we're not going to break them, and it's not going to. I mean, it's more going to be a bump in their economy than destroying their economy. And there are some things that we can do that could have bigger impact. And I'm not suggesting that we've got to do anything terribly radical. people will do what they do. But I mean, we used to go down and shut the thruway down. We haven't done that in a long time here, not in Seneca territory. In fact, the last time there was even a discussion about shutting the thruway down. People say, "Oh, you better not do that. They've got the Patriot Act now, and you'll end up in a cage in Guantanamo Bay or something like that." Always wanted to go to Cuba, not that section of Cuba, but always wanted to go to Cuba. But no, we get talked out of it by our own people. And I'm going to get into that a little bit more, like I said, in the second half of the show, because we get caught into this thing about, well, what are the leaders saying? Well, I'll tell you what some of the leaders are saying, and it ain't good. It ain't good. I mean, I understand that if you're in a position of where you represent your people, one of your deep concerns is the safety of your people. But there's short-term safety and there's long-term safety. If you're allowing some of these terrible things to happen to our lands, then you are putting the safety of your people in jeopardy. And I get it. There are people who are so committed to nonviolence and non-direct action and that kind of stuff that they don't want to do anything. And you know what? They're not going to do anything anyway. But then they start speaking out against their own people who are willing to put themselves sometimes physically on the line. And at some point we have to. And I'm not saying that's the only front in any of these battles. Like I said, I mentioned first off, education first and foremost. But if we are going to block a highway, then somebody should know why we're blocking a highway. But we don't all have to get individually famous for doing this stuff. I mean, there's a reason that we wear face masks, not because we're committing a crime. We just don't want to be targeted later on. So, look, we have to really think this stuff through and let those who can do what they can do. But look, if you have some media expertise, social media expertise, then by all means offer your services. But if you have construction, knowledge, and you know how to, create more vulnerability to whatever the build might be, whether it's a pipeline, whether it's equipment, whether it's setting up mining operations or whatever else. Look, we need to take a firmer stand. Not just on our territories either. We're not talking about blocking highways. Here, we've got, three bridges that cross between Niagara Falls and Buffalo, Niagara Falls, and the Canadian side. We can disrupt traffic a little bit. Hell, half the time when we want to travel across those borders, we get held up. So there are things we can do. We have border crossings in Akwesasne, and look, there's any number of things that we can do. But there's physical things that we can do, and then there's things that we can do that are clearly more passive. And I don't have a problem with those actions either. All right, we're at the bottom of the hour, so I'm going to take a break. But when I come back, I want to talk about things that we can't do, that we shouldn't do, that we mustn't do. And you'll want to hear this one out. So come back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. All right, thanks for coming back. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Hey, I want to thank our sponsors. Let's Talk Native is sponsored by Ross and Holly John and the RJE family of businesses, Eric White and ERW Enterprises, and the folks at Grand River Enterprises in Six Nations. Look, and the first two companies are from here in Cattaraugus. We don't have a lot of sponsors, but we got the sponsors that allow us to do this show on a weekly basis, twice a week actually, and do a show in New York as well. I want to make a note. I won't be going to New York this Thursday. They're doing a fundraiser special or something. I might jump on Facebook and do a live stream on Thursday in my normal slot anyway, at least for an hour. So maybe we'll do something. There's so much going on that I hate to miss a week or the middle of the week in addressing issues. So maybe I'll jump online on Thursday as well. Hey, look, I not only want to thank those sponsors who help us on a weekly basis or the monthly basis, but those of you who from time to time will drop some money in on our PayPal account. You can find that on our website, letstalknative.com. let'stalknative.com. Those of you who put a check in the mail, and they do that from time to time. Some of you do, and I appreciate it. But I also appreciate those of you who support the show by sharing the show and encouraging other people to check us out. Obviously, I offer a perspective that isn't always the most widely held view on many of these issues. And I take it back. I think it is a more widely held view, but it's not a widely shared view in any social media. Everybody else is too busy trying to be, holy rollers or being, passing themselves off as, some mystic figures or whatever else. Not me. Look. I think these issues need to be confronted, and I'm not afraid to say the things that need to be confronted, including confronting some of our own people. Sometimes I'll be criticized for that. You always got something negative to say about our people. Look, I probably am among many of the people who are on social media who are prepared to call out some of our own people, and I'm going to do a little bit of that today as well. But I do want to I want to thank those of you who share the show. My wife, she shares our Facebook live stream from our original from our Let's Talk Native page, and she shares on another 20 or 30 pages, so it gets out there. And of course, those of you who share the podcasts and the YouTube videos, I appreciate all of that. So again, I want to thank you guys. All right. So there are things that we can't do. And among those things, and it gets back to, I talked a little bit about divestment earlier. One of the things that we have to decide is who we are. Are we going to, at some point, if we haven't already, divest ourselves of this Canadian and U.S. identity? I mean, as we're fighting the U.S. and Canada, as we're fighting the states and the provinces, one of the things we can't do is we can't keep claiming that they are ours or that we are theirs. Look, I heard one of these, again, quote unquote, hereditary chiefs, on APTN, making his, what was his name was Namox. And I may not be saying that right, but and there he is in his traditional, regalia, his his dress, his clothing, and he speaks like an elder. But then, what does he say? He says, "Oh, I've lost faith in our justice system, but then we won in court. Now I have faith in our," and he's calling their courts his justice system. Wait a second. If you're supposed to be traditional, why are you claiming the Canadian court system as your courts that you now have renewed faith in? And then he went on to say, that they seem to be recognizing them as British Columbians and as Canadians. Look, we've got to decide, are we them or are we us? Because it is a us and them situation here. And I'm not saying that we don't have allies on the Canadian, that are Canadians or allies that are Americans. I don't know that, look, whether we win in a court hearing or not, those courts aren't there for us. I mean, look, we saw how it all played out in Standing Rock as well. You get these elected chiefs or these appointed chiefs or even these so-called traditional chiefs who will stand up and advocate themselves as Canadians, as Americans, as North Dakotans, as British Columbians. I mean, and what can be more offensive than being called a British Columbian? I mean, I can't even, that image of what a British Columbian is, I can't get that out of my mind. But we can't keep calling ourselves Canadians as we're fighting Canada. If we want to fight for our sovereignty and our distinction, and we want to talk about living on this land since time immemorial, and we want to talk about advocating or advancing our traditional governments, well, if these traditional leaders are calling themselves Canadians and British Columbians or Americans or North Dakotans or whatever the hell else they are, that is a problem. So, when these people get up there and they start speaking for us, and then they say that stuff, and then they want to talk about, oh, we're winning this war. No, you're talking about legal proceedings in a court system that is skewed against us. Their laws do not recognize our distinction. And even when we win in a court case, I would never go into court to fight this stuff. Now, I might get dragged into the courts, and then I'll defend myself. But the idea of me accepting that the courts have the power to adjudicate a conflict like this, look, there is no question. And look, I'm not a huge fan of the United Nations, but there is no question that what the United States and Canada are doing to the indigenous population, as well as other countries. But these are the ones who are supposed to be the champions for human rights, right? Well, they aren't. They are violating the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples. I mean, look, regardless of how you feel about that, there's language in there that talks about free, prior, and informed consent. And, of course, the question is, consent from who? From a guy who says he now has faith in the Canadian in his Canadian court systems? That guy doesn't have consent to speak for me. And you know what? If you're putting your ass on the line up in Wet'suwet'en territory, and some guy in fancy traditional clothing gets up and starts calling himself Canadian, you better have a discussion with that old man, because that's a problem. These are the things that we can't do. We need to make sure that people understand that we are not New Yorkers. We are not Americans. We are not U.S. citizens. We aren't Canadians. We aren't Quebecois. And I don't care how much their Indian Act or their Indian Reorganization Act on the U.S. side, how much these things try to define us within a subjugation of people as a tribe, band, or nation of Indians subordinate to the laws of the United States or Canada. Let's keep in mind that the four nations who voted against the UN Declaration of the Rights of Indigenous Peoples were U.S., Canada, Australia, and New Zealand. And even as those countries tried to make nice by saying, we kind of support the aspirations of that declaration. No, you don't. No, you don't. This is, well, we support the idea of them, provided it doesn't conflict with our laws. Well, you know what? That's the goddamn problem. Your laws stand in stark violation of what the rest of the international community, at least on paper, is willing to say is the minimum standard that states should operate under as it relates to people who predate their existence on a given piece of land. Now, the international community is a huge letdown. Don't get me wrong. But the fact that they'll put that crap in writing and then we won't even call them out on it. Look, I'm not going to cite U.S. law. I'm not going to cite, some of these bullshit treaties that people want to try to wrap themselves up in. And I'm sorry. We better stop using these treaties to define us. We better define ourselves through our own culture, through our own history, a history that predates the U.S. and Canada. That's what defines us. Use our language to the extent we can. But then when we translate that language, make sure that we choose our words wisely. That we don't choose words of subjugation to a dominant force around us. These are the things that we cannot do because words matter. And when somebody stands up there on television or in a court proceeding and puts their words on the record, on the public record, saying some of this stuff, it's a little hard to put that smoke back in a bottle, folks. So we need to correct our people right from the start. And look, I'm not going to put anybody up on a pedestal. I'm not going to put an elected chief, chairman, president, or a hereditary. I don't get the whole hereditary chief. I'm Haudenosaunee. We don't have those. We have this idea of this word chief is a Scottish thing. I think it's a Scottish word. It's not even our word. It's not our language. In our culture, we have people who carry a voice for us. They carry our words. They don't occupy our voice. They are servants of the people. Well, if your servant is speaking publicly and condemning you to subjugation by calling you a Canadian or a British Columbian, I'm sorry, that's a problem. And if you don't recognize the problem, then you've already lost the fight, folks. So, look, I get a little impassioned about this stuff because it pisses me off. When I see those people who get the media coverage, and I don't care if these are the celebrity protesters or these tribal chairmen or women, I think about Teresa Spence, completely taking the wind out of the sails of I Don't Know More. A movement that was purposely void of leadership. It was grassroots at its core. So what does Teresa Spence do? She goes on and, I'm going to do a hunger strike. And she turns the whole thing about her. Look, these people, I don't care if they're band counselors. I don't care if they're elected counselors. I don't care if they're traditional. We need to make sure, first and foremost, whether you support the system or not, they have no authority other than what you give them. They have no authority to speak. Look, if somebody is great in the language, and we've had this experience. We've had people that we knew, when they spoke Mohawk, man, they could speak well and they could speak powerful. Then they would try to translate it, and you find out, he can speak Mohawk pretty good, but he sure can't speak English very well. Well, we've got to we have to be painstakingly clear as we're communicating to people, not to communicate some level of subjugation to them. The strength is our history. The strength that we have is the fact that we've been here, as far as they're concerned, forever. But the second we start claiming ourselves to be New Yorkers or British Columbians or Canadians or U.S. citizens or Americans, that history means nothing. Now we've just bound ourselves to whatever their black words on white paper say. Look, our future depends on making sure that we carried some of our past forward. And that doesn't mean we don't progress as a people, but it means that we don't take a back seat. And we don't let their labels, their courts, their cops. Look, I know what it's like to face the judicial system. And I won't say that I lost, but I lost 2 years of my life because of it. But I'm damn sure not going to come out of a situation like that with my tail between my legs. And I'm going to try to be smarter the next time that I'm faced with this kind of conflict. And I'm not going to give somebody bad advice about going into a situation that could be not only life-threatening, but life-altering. Look, when you've been sent to prison, you start to measure your time, your life. That's one of those milestones. You say, there was my life before I went, and there was life after I went. And hopefully you've got some other great milestones in your life, your marriage, your children, your grandchildren, some of these great things that have happened in your life. But then you have the tragedies, the lives that were lost, the tragic accidents, the conflicts that took you and placed your ass in a prison for 2 years. Look, we've got to make sure that we communicate properly. The first thing I talked about was education. But if we're gonna if we're gonna find ourselves on social media, mainstream media, in court testimonies, claiming that we want to be treated like other Canadians, I posted a meme the other day. I said, look, some people fight for equality, other people fight to be free. Well, we've got to decide what we're fighting for. Because if what you're fighting for in Wet'suwet'en territory is to have equality with other Canadians, then you're going to lose my support. Because I want to fight for your right to be free. Your right to a free and independent existence in your territories. That's what we should all be fighting for. Not for equality under Canadian law or equality under U.S. law. Because, this idea of equality, it gets measured in numbers. And our numbers aren't there. You know what? They viewed us as selfish people. Because as they eliminated our population, as they depopulated our lands, they said, oh, look at those selfish Indians. All more land than they could possibly use. That's wrong. They started looking at us and saying that because the land we occupied was land that they wanted, and the land we occupied they thought was more than what we deserved, that's how they justified killing us, killing us even more. So no, I don't want equality with that mindset. I don't want to be treated as a Canadian or an American. And it's not because I think this isn't about, superiority. I'm not saying we're better, but we're different. Our history is different. Our shared history is clearly different from a perspective because it's a shared history where they are the aggressor and we've been the victims of genocide for 500 years. But our history goes way back before then. There is much that we can do, but we better keep in mind that there are some things that we can't do. We can't fight the U.S. in the way that we want to fight the U.S. We can't fight Canada. We can't fight their companies, their multinational corporations, by their rules, in their courts. They just write paper. They just make shit up. They don't have to worry about whether the right and wrong of something, because that's not what their justice system is about. Slavery was legal. In Germany, the gas chambers, what they put the Jewish people through, and the others who were executed, that was legal. Why? Because Germany said it was legal. The genocide that our people have experienced has been legal. Lynchings, if law is not enforced, then it's legal. Our missing and murdered Indigenous women, if nobody is prosecuted for that stuff, then it's legal. We've got to decide not whether we're going to get a fair shake in their courts or not, because we're not. We've got to decide whether we have the resolve to either dig in where we need to dig in or find a way to kick the can until we're in a better position to fight. And when I say fight, I don't mean pick up arms necessarily. I don't mean, fight a bloody, violent conflict. There are many ways to fight something. But the worst way to fight is the one where they control the game. They have the judges, they have the lawyers, they have the jails, they have the law enforcement. That's like going into a gunfight with a pebble. So we've got to decide who we are. Are we British Columbians? Really? That's what, there's no way in hell that I will believe that the folks who are fighting this fight in Wet'suwet'en territory are British Columbians. But when I hear somebody, and I know some of you probably have a great deal of respect for this guy who got up on in this news interview. And I suspect some of you cringed when you heard some of his language. But damn it, we better do more than cringe. We got to correct the record. So look, this is the part that bothers me about what people claim, those who claim to be leaders. Hypocrisy, contradiction. I look for the contradictions in their system to exploit it and to show the weakness of their system. Well, they do the same thing to us. They're looking for the weak links. Look, I've said it before. We've got to rethink what our identities are. Are we Christians? Are we soldiers? Are we Canadians? Most of our words, when you translate, the words that we use to describe ourselves, at its foundation is the people. Then, and the rest of it might be the people of a place. We use a way to describe our people or something that is distinctly characteristic about our people. But it's always the people. It's always being a human being. This idea of claiming to be a nation with a boundary and a border, that's unnatural. That's a European thing. Predominantly. That's something that comes from the monarchies of Europe, drawing lines in the sand. Man-made identities. See, our identities are natural. They're born of the places, not the boundaries, but the place and the characteristics of the land. Look, I realize some boundaries are rivers or mountain ranges. But it's not the boundaries, it's the mountain ranges. It's the rivers that define us. It's the coastlines. It's the sun rising or the sun setting. We've got to rethink the words that we use and make sure, regardless of what language we're using. Because, look, if we're speaking in our native tongue but thinking in English, if we're speaking in our native tongue and when we say something, we're still referring to ourselves only in our own language as a subjugated people, something less than them, that's what we're teaching our children. We have to reclaim ourselves because that land is being ripped away. Even when we're not asked to move, they'll run a pipeline through it. They'll put a railway through it. They'll run highways through it. They'll run trucks through it. They'll build man camps to pull fossil fuels, mineral extraction out of our territories. And if we're only asserting ourselves as Canadians or Americans or U.S. citizens, as British Columbians, then we've just redefined who we are. Because I'm not supporting British Columbians. I want to educate some British Columbians. I hate to even use that expression, but I want to educate some people. I want them to see the perspective that we have. But I'll tell you, when I hear this traditional hereditary chief stand up there and call himself a Canadian or a British Columbian who has renewed faith in his Canadian court systems, wow. All I can say is just wow. This is part of our undoing. So this is what we've got to regroup to. There is much that we can do. And we need to support each other. But we have to have confidence that the people who stand up and speak for us, that they do so with proper authority. Because if they're wrong, if they're miscommunicating something, then what they're saying is not unauthorized. And tradition doesn't automatically give somebody authority. Look, we've got to, I said from the beginning, we got to educate ourselves and others. We better understand what the right words are in our language and a way to translate it. Because look, I hear people say, well, the problem is that things don't translate well. You know what? If it takes you 10 minutes to explain a native concept, then take the 10 minutes and explain the native concept. If you have to explain a governing system or a process that may flow very, very well in our native tongue, but you have to use other metaphors and other ways of describing it in English, then take the time to do it. Because you know what? Here's the problem. We're shortcutting and short-arming so many of our concepts that we are the ones who are miscommunicating it. And this chief on APTN, there's a prime example. And and I hate to criticize this individual or to crucify this individual. But who's putting the bug in his ear? Where is he getting his information from? I am very, very troubled by how many native peoples have this sense that they need to have a white man represent them. and give them the words to say. They got to hire a lobbying firm or a consultancy agency or a lawyers. They got to hire experts on us. That we need to find a white man who is an expert on us to speak for us or to speak about us because we don't feel like we can do it ourselves. I see it everywhere. Even as we move into these conflicts. Because look, I know the people on the front line. I know what they're saying. And I agree with them. But if the people who are miles behind them, who claim to be speaking with authority, are cutting their legs out with language like this, that's a problem. Look, I appreciate you guys listening to the show. And by all means, offer your thoughts, offer your commentary. And look, we don't have to put everything that we can do on Facebook. But I don't mind putting it out on Facebook, the things that we can't do. We can't miscommunicate and we can't misidentify ourselves. It's really important that we grab a hold and take command of our own identities. I want to thank you for listening. This is John Kane. This is Let's Talk Native. Yahweh.